A big brawl. For the first time in this campaign, Donald John Trump is legitimately under siege. In the past 24 hours, he has taken 4 body blows from Ben Carson, Carly Fiorina, Bobby Jindal, and Jeb Bush. Let's start with the first body blow that comes from the religious angle, courtesy of Dr. Carson.
One of my favorite Bible verses, Proverbs 22:4. It says, by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. And that's a very big part of who I am. Humility and the fear of the Lord. I don't get that impression with him. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't get that impression.
I never heard faith was a big thing until just recently.
He's a Seventh-day Adventist.
Running.
I mean, it's something he talks about a lot.
Carson's faith, and all of a sudden he becomes this great religious figure. I don't think he's a great religious figure. And I saw him yesterday quoting something, and he was quoting on humility, and it looked like he had just memorized it about 2 minutes before he made the quote. So, don't tell me about Ben Carson.
Well, speaking to the Washington Post, Carson backed off his comments and said that he doesn't want to get dragged into a, quote, gladiator fight with Trump, probably because Trump would destroy him and drag his corpse on the back of a chariot through the streets of Midtown Manhattan. But that is just one front of the war on Trump. On the second front is Carly Fiorina. It's all about how Rolling Stone quoted the Donald about her. He said, quote, look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president? I mean, she's a woman, and I'm not supposed to say bad things, but really, folks, come on, are we serious? Turns out Trump says that he meant Carly Fiorina's persona, but that doesn't really matter at this point. Here is how Carly Fiorina herself responded on Fox.
Honestly, Megyn, I'm not going to spend a single cycle wondering what Donald Trump means, but maybe, just maybe, I'm getting under his skin a little bit because I am climbing in the polls.
Okay, now on to part 3. A lot of this happened on Twitter today, which is kind of Donald Trump's arena. It was Bobby Jindal, who fired off a series of tweets like an angry internet commenter saying that Trump doesn't stand for anything except himself, that he's egomaniacal and unserious, and also a narcissist. It was all part of a speech that Jindal gave at the National Press Club.
I want to say what everybody is thinking about Donald Trump, but afraid to say. The idea of the Donald Trump Act is great. The reality of Donald Trump, however, is absurd. He's non-serious. He's a carnival act. Donald Trump is shallow. He has no understanding of policy. He is full of bluster. He has no substance. He lacks the intellectual curiosity to even learn. Issues don't mean anything to him. Policies, ideals are not important to him. He is for Donald. Donald Trump is a narcissist and he's an egomaniac. We know that only a very weak and small person needs to constantly tell us how strong and powerful they are. The real danger is that, ironically, Donald Trump could destroy America's chance to be great again. The joke's on us. He's laughing all the way to the bank or the polling station. P.T. Barnum was never more right than right now.
Later in the day, Donald Trump replied in a statement that treated Jindal like a common has-been. Quote, he did not make the debate stage, and therefore I have never met him, Trump said. I only respond to people that register more than 1% in the polls. I never thought he had a chance, and I've been proven right, end quote. Now, finally, part 4 of the war on Trump. After all this, just moments ago, Jeb Bush jumped in on CNN, first reacting to Jindal's comment that Trump is not a serious candidate, and then reacting to Trump's comment about Carly Fiorina.
I agree. I think that Mr. Trump, as the front runner, needs to be treated like all candidates, and he needs to share what his experiences are to be president of the United States, what his ideas are, and so far, at least, he has not been serious about that. I don't see how, over the long haul, that you can insult your way to the nomination or the presidency, certainly not the presidency, and not the nomination either. This disparaging of women is deeply troubling. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
All right, so Mark, you're down there in Washington, D.C. You've been watching all this unfold today. Trump's had a lot of scraps during this campaign, but he's never been under fire in quite this way. So let's talk about each of these and how they might either individually or collectively be different. Let's start off with the Ben Carson flap.
Well, I disagree with the premise that he's under siege, at least so far, although each of these has a certain distinctive quality, maybe some peril. On Carson, right now, a lot of people in the establishment are skeptical that Trump and Carson will end up as the nominee. But if you look at the key national and state polls, these guys are 1 and 2, and in most of them, they're way ahead of everybody else. So for once, Trump is fighting with someone, since he became the front runner, right at his level. And these issues of faith, if eventually Carson, Cruz, and others, Ted Cruz and others, can convince voters, particularly in Iowa and South Carolina, that Trump isn't a man of faith, that does have some peril for him. But I don't think this round did it, particularly since Carson backed off.
I think, look, when I said under siege, I think all I really mean is the notion that Trump is now fighting a multi-front war. He's not been taking this much incoming all at once. I think you're right about the Carson thing. I also think the truth is that Carson, although he's a kind of indistinct political figure, he's someone that a lot of Republicans really like. And he comes across, even when he was attacking Trump, he comes across as a kind of mild-mannered. Now, we know that he's capable of some relatively acerbic rhetoric, but getting into a fight with Ben Carson over religion, I think that's dangerous territory for Trump, because one of the places where Trump, to me, seems most inauthentic is on the question of religion. Moving on, let's talk about the Carly Fiorina thing, because I think this may be the one where he's in the most danger. Tell me what you think about that.
He is in the most danger on this one, even though, of course, with the Megyn Kelly thing, there have been other instances where there's been questions about Mr. Trump's attitude towards women. I think this one has a lot of peril. You already see some leading Republican voices, elected officials, consultants, others, speaking out about what he said, and it does make it possible that, again, in Iowa and other places where Trump doesn't do as well with women as with men, this could create a huge gender gap for him that could be a problem down the road.
Well, yeah, and look, I mean, this is an issue where, you've got the Republican Party recognizes it has a problem with female voters to begin with. And if Trump gets cast as a misogynist by the women of the Republican Party, broadly speaking, that will, I think, effectively foreclose the ability that he would ever have to get the Republican nomination. I'm not saying he's there yet, but between this and the Megyn Kelly thing, he's starting to kind of get close to that territory. So let's talk also about Jindal and about Jeb. What do you think about those two fights, Mark?
I think the Jindal thing is obviously going to be chalked up by most people as an attempt by Jindal to save his candidacy, but he is doing better. In our Iowa poll and other polls, he has moved up. He's got pretty high favorables. And it's going to be fascinating at the debate next week. A lot of times in politics, you see candidates fight in public, and then they get to a debate, and they're back in the green room, and they're palling around. It's going to be fascinating to see with all these candidates we're talking about, with the exception maybe of Carson, Fiorina, Bush, Jindal. Jindal won't be in the main debate, but he'll be there at the same time. Will they pal around with Trump, or will this public animus, public disapproval extend to how they treat him on the debate stage, but also off stage?
Yeah, well, as you know, I've been predicting that I thought this debate next week is going to be a fireworks display, and today makes me think it even more so. I'm curious about whether you think...
I'm edging in your direction on that.
Sorry?
I'm edging in your direction on that after today.
Thank you very much. Do you think Jeb is happy to have all this company in attacking Trump, or do you think he preferred to be the lone Trump attacker?
One of the great debates in Republican politics now on the campaigns and elsewhere is it good, is it smart to be the one to take on Trump and to try to take down Trump? I think the Bush campaign felt they had to do what they were doing. You still see people like Scott Walker, Marco Rubio, John Kasich staying out of this. I think at this point there's strength in numbers for most of these campaigns to be a voice to try to rally the party against him, even though right now you could argue that Trump's being big is helping people like Jeb Bush, helping people like Ben Carson.
Yeah, I got to think that Jeb is a little bit happier to not be the lone voice out there anymore.